So today, we're diving into something really different. This isn't your typical success story. Instead, it's a profound psychological record pulled from a private diary that one woman kept for 13 years. It chronicles her journey as a Chinese migrant in Australia, and it's a story of trauma, disillusionment, and the incredible fortress she had to build in her own mind just to survive it all. Now, the diary actually ends with this haunting quote, but we're starting with it because it just perfectly nails the dark, cynical, yet strangely insightful tone of her entire journey. It really sets the stage for a story that is anything but simple. So, how did she end up building this mental fortress? Well, to really get it, you have to go back to the beginning. Before all the trauma, her defining traits were logic and this absolutely ironclad sense of discipline. And yeah, this slide breaks down those early years perfectly. Between 2012 and 2015 in Beijing, after being emotionally scammed, she didn't just get sad. She treated her healing like a problem to be solved, becoming what she called the rational healer. Then in Tasmania, she turned into an ascetic monk. For 4 solid years, her entire life was just this exercise in extreme self-discipline, all for one single goal: permanent residency. And you know what? She did it. It proved she had immense willpower. But here's the thing. That same rigid focus also made her psychologically brittle, which kind of set the stage for everything that came next.
Okay, so she gets her residency, she moves to Melbourne, and this is where her whole disciplined world didn't just crack. It absolutely shattered. She walked into what she chillingly describes as the Shura field.
So what's a Shura field? Well, in mythology, it's a battlefield of just endless, brutal conflict. And for her, Melbourne became that battlefield. And this wasn't just one bad thing happening. No, it was this relentless, multi-front psychological war that systematically destroyed every ounce of trust she had in the world.
And this slide, wow, it just lays out the devastation with brutal clarity. Just look at the hits she took, one after the other. First, financial ruin from a devastating scam. Second, emotional ruin from a humiliating hidden relationship. Then, feeling like she had no other choice, she entered a sham marriage just to survive, a massive moral compromise for her. And finally, maybe the worst blow of all, constant betrayal and manipulation from her own compatriots, the very people she should have been able to trust.
And to make that financial ruin real for you, here's the number: 40,000 Australian dollars. Gone. Lost in what's known as a pig butchering scam, which is a particularly cruel kind of fraud, where they build a fake romantic relationship just to convince you to invest your life savings away. This wasn't just about losing money. It was a deep, personal violation.
You know, after all that, what's the one place you think you can always go? Home, right? But a trip back to China in 2025 delivered the absolute final crushing blow. In her diary, she wrote about seeing her own parents as calculating and suppressing. And that was it. That destroyed the very last piece of trust she had left in anyone. And her reaction? It was total. She severed all ties with her family. So you're faced with total collapse, complete isolation. How on earth do you survive that? This is where her story takes this wild turn. She didn't just put up with the pain. She built this incredibly complex, unique metaphysical defense system to make sense of it all. Okay, first up, to even process the amount of cruelty she was facing, she basically decided her tormentors weren't really human. She started calling them demons in human skin, these non-human things controlled by evil. And by doing that, by dehumanizing them, it was like a switch she could flip. It allowed her to cut those emotional ties and really protect her own sanity. All right, next, she came up with this idea she called the slaying line. She started seeing the whole system, capitalism itself, as this giant, uncaring harvesting machine. And her theory was, if you fall below a certain line, maybe you get sick, you lose your job, you get scammed, the system won't catch you. It will just discard you, ruthlessly. It was a way to explain her suffering without making it personal. And then there's the last piece, and this might be the most powerful one. She completely reframed her trauma. It wasn't just pain anymore, it became soul cultivation. All the betrayals, all the hardship became spiritual homework. It wasn't meaningless suffering. It was the necessary process to upgrade her soul. She literally gave her trauma a sacred purpose, and in doing so, she took back control of the story. And this right here, this shows that transformation perfectly.
She went from being the failed victim on the left, passively taking the pain, being crushed by it, into the enlightened critic on the right. She became an active interpreter of her pain, someone who was being strengthened by her homework, and an analyst of the very system that tried to break her.
But, and this is a big but, this incredible transformation came at a huge price. To survive, she had to build a fortress of solitude, and her diary really peels back the curtain on some of the harsh truths of the modern migrant experience that pushed her to build those walls so high. And what becomes so clear is that, while her story is extreme, the elements of it, they're not entirely unique. Her diary points out this painful irony: how the same language, the same culture, can be used for what she called precise harvesting, with compatriots scamming each other. It shows how people can get trapped in these exploitative ethnic subeconomies. And it all leads to this state of double marginalization, where you don't quite fit in your new country, but you don't fit in your old one anymore either. You become a spiritual nomad. And that context, it's absolutely everything. Look, from the outside, her total retreat into isolation, her whole metaphysical worldview, it might seem extreme, even paranoid. But what her diary makes crystal clear is that this wasn't really a choice. It was her only viable survival strategy to prevent a complete and total mental breakdown. And that brings us to the big, unresolved question from the diary itself, and it's the one I want to leave you with. So when you look at this whole story, this incredible feat of survival, what do you see? Is it a powerful awakening, a glimpse into a deeper truth about how the world works? Or is it a tragic but brilliant psychological fortress built to withstand unbearable trauma? It's something I think about.